Hello, my name is Sarah Carver, and this speech is on the food business, and it's for Colorado Christian University. The food industry is a billion-dollar industry, from food manufacturing to food distribution centers. The end goal is to make money, and this sometimes is even at the expense of the consumer, which is you and me. As consumers, it is our responsibility and our job to investigate the large-scale food processing industry. This means starting at the manufacturers, going to the food processing plants, even investigating the local supermarkets and their policies, especially on waste. Now, it is not as a mother of 6 children, I am not only looking for the best deal, I'm also looking for the most nutritious deal, and that can include finding foods that will not go to waste. So I'm looking at anything that I can put the store and use at a later date, things that last longer on the shelf, any kind of thing that can both help with saving money as well as feeding my family healthy food and healthy choices. Now, the food industry is like any other industry. It is a money-making industry. The ultimate goal is for them to make as much money as they possibly can. Now, this might mean that large amounts of food go to waste. And this might mean that they're doing this at the expense of the consumer. Now, food waste is not just something that happens at the manufacturing level, which, though it does happen on farms. That even said that, according to Dr. Mercola, Joseph Mercola, in an article that he wrote in 2015, on a large scale, farms end up trashing about 20% of the produce that they could sell that's perfectly good, except for cosmetic reasons. So that's 20% of produce that is just trash simply because it's not pretty. Now, within the supermarket also, if it's not sold by the sell-by date, the supermarket will then trash the food. In their bins in the back, you can go through their bins in the back and find perfectly good food that was just not sold by the sell-by date. So that means, and this is according, again, to Dr. Joseph Mercola in the same article, about 40% of food in the United States is wasted. That's nearly half of all food. Waste happens at all steps in the food chain. And as he puts it, it's from the field to the fork. So starting from the farm to us. Now, obviously, it's not just the supermarkets and it's not just the farms that are wasting food. We also, as consumers, can waste quite a bit of food, actually, when we throw our leftovers out instead of saving them and eating them at a later date, or even freezing them. And also when say a bag of lettuce goes bad and it's before we've used it all or even used any of it. That's consumer waste. And according to Doug Roush, who is the former president of Trader Joe's, he wrote an article for Fox News, and he said that sometimes food can be perfectly good for a day, a week, a year, and often multiple years after the number's branded on the package. Now, what is he talking about? Well, he's talking about expiration dates, not necessarily sell-by dates, even though some sell-by dates are also not really numbers to go by. He's living by his words because he has he's actually opened up a grocery store in the Boston area called the Daily Table, where all of the items have one thing in common, and they're past their sell-by or expiration date. And he sells them at a marked down rate, and gives a lot of the food away actually to food pantries as well. And according to the men's health nutrition expert, Alan Aragon, he says the more refined and processed the food is, the longer that you can keep it past the expiration date. And he actually gives a few examples. Now, canned goods like this one, this is just a store brand sliced carrots, has a expiration date. It's on the bottom here, and it says it's best by December 2017. Now, that's a year from now. But according to Alan Aragon, the food expert, he says that likely cans with no dents, which this has no indents, can be kept in a dry, cool place for up to actually 3 to 6 years, past the 1 to 2 years that normally says. Now, you'll know that it's lost, but bacteria can't get into this can. So what will happen though is that the food might deteriorate into mush, or it might lose its taste. He also talks about frozen foods, and frozen foods, except for meat, are much like canned goods, and they pretty much are expiration proof. Now, this is an Outshine fruit bar. It's made with real fruit, but a really good point of it is it's made with no GMOs, which means there's no real preservatives in this. So this has also an expiration date. It's a frozen food, and you would think that because it can melt, it would be, quick. It'd be a couple of days after you bought it. But actually, we just bought this a couple of weeks ago, and it says it's best by June 9th of 2017. So I can keep this for as long as it doesn't melt, as long as the freezer doesn't go out, and these bars are kept frozen and in shape. I can keep these up to 3 to 6 years as well. Now, eggs, there's a test that you can do for eggs, for fresh eggs or even eggs bought at the store. If they float, they're no good. This is because bacteria gases, bacteria produces gases in high numbers, and so this causes the egg to float. So it's a perfect test for eggs. Even if there's a best by date on it, if you put it in water, cold water, and it doesn't float, the egg is still good. Now, pasta and dried goods, such as this popcorn that I have, can be kept past the expiration date. And I actually examined every bit of this popcorn, and there is no expiration date on this popcorn. And there's a lid, and it's kept tight, and if you don't open it, it even has a seal on it. Now, I have used this kind of stovetop popcorn before, and when I popped it, it's not popped very well, and it's kind of tasted stale. At that point, I threw it away. But I believe that this can be resealed and kept at room temperature on the shelf for years, probably. Also, another thing is non-dairy type products, non-dairy pudding, which is also kind of like a canned good. Now, this has an expiration date of November of 2017. But if this is kept in a dry, cool place, this will be we'll be able to use this for a couple of years as well. What about bread? Well, bread obviously will go bad, and this bread in particular has a use-by date of January 10th. We just bought this bread today. But if you put the bread in the refrigerator or freezer, it can be kept well past the expiration date. And the test for bread is does it feel stale or do you see mold? So those are a few items. And as for fresh fruit or fresh vegetables, there's no expiration date on those. So what it is you have to taste it, you smell it, and you feel it. You look at it, you smell it, you feel it. If it looks right, taste it. If it's kind of not great, if it's getting mushy, if you'll be able to tell a fresh fruit how it's doing. So, according to the reference shelf, The Business of Food, it's a book. Supermarkets often push up these expiration dates just to get consumers to dispose of their food faster, so that they will come back to the grocery store at a quicker rate. So, like I've said, so what can you do as a consumer? Well, as a consumer, I would say, look at the expiration dates. Use your own judgment. Look up when things are good by. Are they good? Are they good past the year that they said? Are they good? Are they only good for a few weeks, like bread? What can you do to make it last longer? Put it in the refrigerator. Put it in the freezer. Are there certain ways that you can store items to make them last longer so that you cut down personally on waste? Now, in conclusion, I would like to say that the food industry, again, I'm going to say this, the food industry is like any other money-making industry. They're wanting to make as much money as possible, and they're willing to screw over the consumer to do this. So it's our job to figure out how we cut out waste and cut out the massive amount of food waste in this country. Again, 40% of food is wasted in this country, and a lot of it is by the consumer. So we need to make sure that we are doing all of the things that we can, checking the expiration dates and really checking the food ourselves, and not necessarily going by the expiration dates. Using our common sense when we look at our food, and just to make sure that we are not contributing to the waste that is in this country. I used several references. I used a book, The Reference Shelf, The Business of Food, which is a book that you can get at the library. And I also read an article online from Fox News, which is called "Which Expired Foods Are Okay to Eat," if you need to check out how to check out your expiration dates. And there's Dr. Mercola has a website where he puts his articles, and it's one is "You Won't Believe How Much Food Goes to Waste," and if you want to explore any more of these avenues on how much food is actually wasted in America. Thank you, and I hope that you take some of this advice and go with it and help save some food. And